So today we're going to talk about the pros and cons of online versus in-person training. Since this whole thing hit, I've been kind of thrusted into pivoting and having to change my whole business model rather quickly. So I had to move my clients online, train them from a distance, catch up a little bit on the technology, and be able to provide a quality product, even though I am not there in person. Uh, Beforehand, I do have a small online presence, and I have a few people I train online. But a vast majority of my clientele are in person in classes, small groups, athletes, general population, one-on-one, all that stuff. We're going to go into that in a little bit, but that's just how I like it because I am a control freak, a quality control freak rather, and I'd rather be there and give people instant feedback. Um, so from a client perspective, some of the negatives uh, with online training that I've learned is I'm not there with you. Your coach is not there with you, um, and the person who's going to do online coaching or seeking online advice is going to be a very highly motivated person, anyways. They're going to be able to hold themselves accountable. Generally, those people, you give them a program, you have some exercise demos, they're going to do it. They're not going to skip a session. They're not going to be very they're going to be very intrinsically motivated. Okay. So if you get a bunch of people that are not like that, who are now trying to find online training, it's very difficult for them to be held accountable, especially if they're not seeing you in person, multiple times throughout the week. And then going back to that quality control thing, feedback is delayed. It's with everything, nutrition, exercise programming. People are afraid to text you or they're afraid to email you because they do not want to bother you. So you have to reach out and see how things are going. So that might be a week that they've been doing something incorrectly or been doing something wrong instead of being in the gym when you can correct it on the spot. So feedback is delayed. Um, and it's going to take you a little while longer to get people to those standards or those operating standards that you would in the gym. Uh, and this is not me attacking online personal training at all, obviously, but it's very easy to find a terrible coach online. You you can spend 3 minutes on Instagram and find 150 men and women who just completed the first bodybuilding show or just got an online certification over the weekend and now they're ready to rock and roll. They'll take you on as a client. They got a bunch of cookie cutter programs. Those are more common, but there are some really good online guys and gals out there. So another con, it's very easy to find a bad, non-reputable coach. Um, and this has not been an issue for me, but this is something that I've been thinking about. Relationship forming in my gym, we have a good community and we help each other. And in that, you're going to form a relationship with your clients and with your members. You see them every single day. You get to know them. They tell you, you get to know their lives. You get to see their kids, and especially in a small town that I'm in, nourishing and nurturing those relationships is what is ultimately going to be the success in your personal training business. Because who wants to spend money on someone that they just don't like? I've seen some really bright-minded people who have the personality of a two by four fail in this industry, and that's because not a lot of people like them, and vice versa. I have met people who are adequate knowledge, but they have a good personality and they're just blowing the doors off their personal training business. But in regards to online, if you meet someone for the first time, it's very difficult to form that relationship with initially. You're talking on the phone, you're talking via Zoom, via Skype, and it's very tough to get that human to human interaction. And then with that, it's going to be hard if you don't have that relationship bond, you're not going to hold yourself accountable as a client, right? So you're not going to be able to do the workouts and you're not going to be able to perform as adequately as the coach would be if you were in person. Um, so some of the pros of online personal training is the number one that I think cost effectiveness. You can train a bunch of people for a lower price and get good results, and it doesn't um, cost your client an arm and a leg. And I hate saying cheap because it's not cheap. It's just more affordable way, more affordable business model. And you can see that. And with online training, you can train hundreds and hundreds of people. In person, you can't because you're limited by the hours on the clock. Um, The stress level is much lower. I'm not saying that my job stresses me out, but um, it is, hopping in and out of a computer. I'm doing a lot more sitting. That's the only added stress I can find. So it's not, the reason it's not stressful is because you're not up, you're not constantly coaching, you're not constantly queuing. You are online, but you're very limited to what you can see. But in terms of overall for me, my stress has been lower. Working with anyone, you can work with anyone doing online stuff, and I can work, and that goes for in-person training as well. Um, but for the most part, uh, if you're taking on a client, they can afford you. You can coach and work with anyone in terms of the realm of online fitness. And then if you do a good enough job, you can build an online community. You see this all the time with guys and gals that have spent a decade building their online presence, and they have a really good community going. But then again, it takes time, right? It takes time to build that community. It takes time to build that business. It doesn't happen overnight. Um, so from my perspective of from coaching in person versus online, uh, it's been very difficult not micromanaging. So the reason why my business model is set up for in-person training, and we do the semi-private model, is because it's quality control. I want to make sure that people are moving to the best of their abilities. And people generally do not move very well. It's not their fault. It's just because they've never been taught correctly. And then doing that over the internet is even more difficult, right? Getting someone to properly squat, doing a movement screening, a modified movement screening via Zoom is difficult. And you have to, be looking, and it's going to take time. It depends on their internet connection, their technology that they're using. So it's going to be a lot of variables in there. Um, it's harder to keep people more accountable at a distance. Dropping text messages often is one way to do it, but that only goes so far. Seeing people in person is much more effective at keeping someone accountable than it would be if you were just texting them once a week or sending them periodic emails. Um, and then overall, for me, there's just a whole bunch of moving parts to this. Uh, as I talked about, the feedback loop. So there's not a immediate feedback with queuing. So that drives me up a wall when I send people programs, and it's not their fault. It's just how the online structure is set up. So if someone was having difficult with a deadlift, or someone was having difficulty with a certain exercise, and they've been performing it for a week or two without really telling me, then that's 2 weeks wasted that you could have got them moving better. So that drives me up a wall as well. And then me personally, me having to beef up my exercise demo library, getting my YouTube up to par, and I still need to do that, help me out with that a little bit. So putting those videos up and attaching them into my programs now have made things a lot easier for me. And then distancing is not, the distance training is not for everyone. Some people prefer it. Those people who are more intrinsically motivated because they can get a program, they can get a general critique, and then they can hold themselves accountable much more easier than some people. Some people need to come in every day and see you, and you need to hold them accountable. You need to be able to cue them, fix their mistakes. That'll keep them in the gym day in and day out. But overall, what I've noticed is the number one thing that's helped me out with this transition from offline to online is the years of experience I've had on the floor. How many years have I spent, teaching a plethora of people how to hinge, how to deadlift, how to squat, right? You have to spend years on the floor, hours and hours a week, teaching people the same thing over and over again. Everyone moves differently, and you need that experience, right? So the best online coaches are the guys and gals that have spent years training in a gym in person, because when you hop online and you're trying to cue someone, if you've only taught two people how to hinge and you have someone in front of you that's not responding to the only two cues that it's going to be a train wreck. That's why you need to diversify the people that you are coaching. So that's why we coach everyone, right? Athletes all the way to general population. That's going to help you in the long run.